The great orbital station Varela hung in the void like a jewel carved from metal and light. Its rings spun slowly, drawing power from the star it circled. Ships of many shapes and colors moved in and out of its docking bays. Flags of dozens of worlds fluttered on screens across its hull. Inside, delegates from across the galaxy walked through polished corridors, dressed in the colors and symbols of their home planets for humanity. This summit was meant to be a moment of trust. The Galactic Council had invited Earth's best diplomats to discuss a new era of peace. It was to be a step toward joining the galaxy's inner circle. Humanity had worked hard for decades to earn this invitation. Admiral Rowan had watched his people struggle to prove they could be trusted partners in trade, exploration, and defense. This summit was supposed to be the final seal on that trust. The human delegation arrived into sleek transport vessels, painted in the white and blue of Earth's diplomatic service. The leader of the envoys, Ambassador Hale, walked ahead with calm dignity. Behind him, aides carried secure cases of agreements and proposals. The corridors of Varela smelled faintly of the strange. Plant life grown in its gardens. The air was warm, and the gravity felt close to Earth's own. It was meant to be welcoming. Yet as they passed through the main hall toward the council chamber, Hale noticed something unusual. Council guards in dark armor lined the walls in greater numbers than usual. Their eyes followed the humans without a hint of warmth. A few alien delegates from other species looked away as the humans passed, their faces tight, their hands fidgeting. Hale felt a chill of unease. When the humans entered the chamber, the council speaker, a tall figure with shimmering scales, rose from the central podium. His voice carried across the hall. Humans of Earth, the Council has reviewed evidence that your world is secretly building weapons capable of mass destruction beyond the limits of our treaties. You stand accused of violating galactic law and threatening the balance of peace. The words struck like a physical blow. Hale stepped forward, raising his voice in protest. This is false. Earth has followed every regulation since joining the Interstellar Accords. We came here for peace, not to be judged for crimes we did not commit. But the speaker's voice grew sharper. The evidence is clear. Your envoys are now placed under council custody until Earth's government surrenders its fleets and military facilities. Refusal will result in immediate action against your homeworld. Before the humans could react, the guards moved in. Hale's security detail reached for their personal shields, but a low hum filled the chamber. The air shimmered as stun fields activated. Energy waves rolled through the hall, draining strength from the human guards. One by one, they dropped to their knees. Hale and his aides were surrounded, and their communication devices were seized. The other delegates watched in silence. Some shifted uncomfortably, but none spoke in defense of the humans. Hale realized with bitter clarity that this was not a sudden decision. This had been planned for weeks, perhaps months. Far above the station, the small human escort fleet received a sudden transmission from Varela. Control. It was short and cold. Human vessels, powered down weapons and engines. Any attempt to depart or approach the station will be considered an act of war. You are to remain in your current positions until further notice. The commander of the fleet, Captain Reeve, tried to open a secure channel to the diplomats, but every frequency was jammed. The only thing that came through was a tightly coded message from the station's defense systems. Targeting locks were now active on every human ship. The Council's heavy cruisers, armed and positioned in a defensive grid, were ready to fire at the slightest hint of resistance. Back inside the chamber, Hale was led away along with the other human envoys. The guards' footsteps echoed against the metal floors. The corridors that had once felt warm and welcoming now felt like a cage. The humans were taken to a secured wing of the station, stripped of any devices that could send signals, and placed behind reinforced energy barriers. Hale sat on the narrow bench in his assigned room, trying to steady his thoughts. He remembered the last handshake he had shared with Admiral Rowan before leaving Earth. Rowan had said, "We go with open hands, but we keep our eyes open too." Hale had smiled at the time, thinking it was simply an old soldier's caution. Now he understood it had been wisdom. On Earth, news of the detention spread quickly. The The public was shocked and confused. Many could not believe the council would make such an accusation without proof. Others feared that refusing the council's demands could bring devastating war to their home. In the military command center in orbit above Earth, Admiral Rowan stood before a wall of holographic displays. The latest intelligence reports flashed in steady streams. Satellite data confirmed that council ships were moving toward human trade routes and colonies. It was not the movement of a defensive force. This was preparation for a full blockade. Rowan's staff waited for his orders. Some urged immediate mobilization. Others argued for patience, hoping to negotiate. But Rowan knew the truth. If the council had planned this trap, they had already closed every diplomatic path. Humanity's survival would depend on readiness, not on begging for mercy. Still, open war at this moment would be suicide. The Council's fleets outnumbered Earth's forces by a wide margin. Humanity had advanced quickly in recent decades, but they were not yet the most powerful force in the stars. If they struck too soon, the Council could destroy Earth before the truth was even known. Rowan took a slow breath. "We do nothing openly," he said at last. "Not yet. Keep our fleets in position, but prepare them for rapid movement. No ship moves without my command. And begin quiet communication with our listening posts and intelligence stations. I want every piece of data we can gather on the Council's fleets, their command structure, and any sign of weakness." A young officer stepped forward. "Sir, if we delay, they may harm our envoys." Rowan's eyes hardened. "If we rush, we risk losing everything. We will get them back, but we will do it on our terms, not the Council's." Far from the command center, in a hidden maintenance bay deep within Varela, a human engineer named Lysa worked quietly among alien technicians. She was not part of the official envoy, but she had been stationed here for months maintaining navigation systems. She had seen the extra patrols arrive days before the summit. She had heard whispers among the station crew about a special operation involving the humans. Now, watching the guards escort the envoys under heavy security, she knew the rumors were true. Lysa moved to a private console and began preparing a short, encrypted signal. She could not send much without being traced, but she could send enough. Enough to tell Admiral Rowan that the Council's actions were not a misunderstanding, but a deliberate attack. Enough to give him the warning he needed. When her signal was ready, she waited for the next scheduled maintenance burst to Earth. In the middle of routine system logs and harmless technical updates, she hid her message, 3 short lines, each carefully coded. Council lied about weapons. They want Earth to surrender 1 week until executions. Then she closed the file, locked the terminal, and returned to work as if nothing had happened. Above her, the station's massive defense guns shifted slightly, tracking the silent human escort fleet. The trap was set. The clock had begun to count down. In the command center above Earth, Admiral Rowan stood at the edge of the main display room. Dozens of officers moved between stations, monitoring communications, ship movements, and planetary defenses. Outside the wide observation window, the curve of Earth glowed under a blanket of white clouds. It was a peaceful sight, but Rowan knew that peace was hanging by a single thread. The encoded message had arrived less than an hour ago. It was buried inside a maintenance log from Varela Station. On the surface, the file looked like a report about cooling systems and navigation calibrations. But the intelligence team had spotted the anomaly. 3 lines of unusual data hidden between ordinary numbers. When decrypted, the meaning became clear. The message was short but powerful. Council lied about weapons. They want Earth to surrender 1 week until executions. Rowan read it twice before speaking. "Who sent this?" Lieutenant Mara, head of the communications desk, replied. It came from a systems console registered to a human engineer named Lysa Ven. She has been assigned to Varela for 6 months. Records show she passed all security checks before deployment. If the Council has not discovered her yet, she may be our only eyes inside that station. Rowan's jaw tightened. Then she is risking her life to warn us. The situation was no longer a matter of suspicion. It was confirmed treachery. The Council had not only fabricated evidence, but also planned to execute the envoys. It was a trap designed to remove humanity's leadership and force the planet into submission. Without firing a single shot, Rowan turned to the tactical table. Get me a full map of Council fleet positions in the nearest 3 sectors. And I want every stealth-capable asset we have on standby around the table. Senior officers exchanged glances. Commander Bren, one of Rowan's oldest friends, stepped forward. If we move our stealth ships now, the Council will notice something is wrong. They will tighten their security and speed up whatever plan they have. That is why, Rowan said, we will not move them in large groups. They will travel alone, using civilian lanes when possible. Each one will have a different cover. Mission, cargo escort, exploration, research. But once they are in position, they will wait for my order. The plan forming in Rowan's mind was risky. Humanity could not match the Council's fleet head-to-head, but a hidden force, striking at the right time and place, could dismantle parts of the Council's strength before the real battle began. Rowan knew this operation needed more than ships. It needed information, and that meant keeping Lysa alive and active. He turned back to Mara. Can we send a signal to Lysa without being detected? Mara hesitated. Not directly. Any open message will be intercepted by the Council's security grid. But we can slip a short-coded response into the same maintenance traffic she used. It will have to be brief and look harmless. Do it, Rowan said. Tell her we received her warning. Tell her to send anything she can about the stations, security, guard shifts, and communications, and tell her that help is coming. While Mara began crafting the coded reply, Rowan moved to the strategy board. A large holographic map lit up, showing the spread of Council warships near human space. Most were patrol vessels and escorts, but 3 heavy battle groups were stationed along the outer trade routes. If war began now, those groups could strike at colonies and shipping lines within days. Rowan pointed to a small cluster of icons. These here, the Beshar sector patrols, they are our first targets. If they vanish, the Council will have to pull ships from other fronts to cover the gap. That will weaken their hold around Earth. Bren studied the map, and who will carry out those strikes? We do not have enough ships for a drawn-out fight, which is why we will not fight them in the open, Rowan said. We will make them disappear without a battle. We take out their supply depots, disrupt their sensor networks, and cripple their engines. By the time they realize what happened, our fleets will be ready. Back on Varela Station, Lysa received the coded reply 2 days later. It was hidden inside a harmless equipment request from Earth. She read it carefully, her heart racing. The words were simple. Message received. Continue observing. Send details. You are not alone. Those last 4 words gave her strength. She began to plan how to collect useful data without drawing attention. Her work in the maintenance bay allowed her access to systems most staff ignored. She could see the timing of guard patrols, the locations of security cameras, and even the station's emergency power lines. Lysa moved slowly and cautiously. She stored her notes in the memory of an old diagnostic tool. Disguised as test results, every shift, she added a little more. She learned which hangar bays held Council fighters, where the envoys were being kept, and which docking platforms received the most supply shipments. She also noticed something that made her uneasy: a group of Council engineers working on a set of large, unmarked cargo containers. The containers were guarded at all hours, and none of the maintenance crew were allowed near them. Lysa suspected they were weapons or equipment for the final phase of the Council's plan. Meanwhile, on Earth, Rowan stealth ships began to slip quietly into space. The Spectre-class cruisers were the pride of humanity's navy, long, dark, and built to avoid almost every known scanning technology. Pilots flew them along irregular routes, mixing with merchant convoys or drifting among asteroid belts to avoid suspicion. Each ship carried a small crew trained for sabotage and deep space infiltration. They were armed not for heavy combat but for precision strikes. A single Spectre could disable a battleship's engines or hack its navigation systems without ever being seen. By the 5th day after receiving Lysa's warning, 6 Spectre cruisers were in position across 3 different sectors. 2 more were still on their way. Disguised as cargo transports, none of the Council's patrols seemed to suspect the movement. Rowan knew the timing would be critical. The message had said 1 week until executions. That gave him 2 days before the envoys would be in mortal danger. He could not simply storm the station, not yet. He needed the Council to believe humanity was still paralyzed, still trapped in fear. In private, Rowan gathered his senior officers for a closed meeting. The doors sealed, and the holographic map lit the dim room with cold light. This, he said, pointing to the marked zones, is Operation Iron Resolve. On my command, our stealth units will strike these targets, cutting the Council's lines and isolating their forces near Earth while they scramble to recover. We move on Varela. Bren nodded slowly. It is a bold plan, Admiral. But what if the Council reacts faster than we expect? Rowan's voice was steady. Then we adapt. But make no mistake, they think they have trapped us. In truth, we are already inside their defenses. And when we move, we will move to win. Outside the station's windows, the blue curve of Earth rotated quietly in space. The world below went about its daily life, unaware of the shadow gathering above. The Council believed humanity would bow to fear. Rowan intended to show them a different truth, that humans did not surrender, and when betrayed, they remembered. The countdown continued. In the silent void between the stars, the Spectre-class cruisers moved like drifting shadows. They carried no running lights, no open transmissions, and no clear pattern of travel. Their black hulls blended with the darkness, and their heat signatures were masked to appear like fragments of frozen rock or harmless debris. Commander Aden sat in the command chair of the Spectre 1, watching the slow rotation of a nearby asteroid on the display. Beyond it, faint glimmers marked the patrol route of a Council destroyer. The destroyer's scanning beams swept back and forth in steady arcs, searching for anything unusual. Hold position, Aden said softly. Let them pass. The crew waited in silence. Even the hum of the engines was kept to a whisper through energy dampeners. The destroyer's sensors swept past, detecting nothing more than cold space. When the patrol moved out of range, Aden gave the order to advance. This was the pattern across the sector. Humanity's stealth ships crept through asteroid belts, shadowed merchant routes, and navigated through debris fields where no patrol wanted to waste time. Each ship's mission was simple: slip past the Council's defenses, reach the hidden targets, and prepare them for destruction. Back on Varela Station, Lysa continued her quiet work in the maintenance bay. She had managed to pass to more coded updates to Earth. The most recent included a rough map of the Envoy detention wing, notes on guard rotations, and the location of the mysterious cargo containers. She had also confirmed that the Council was preparing to broadcast a galaxy-wide statement. In 4 days, the same day the executions were likely to take place, for Admiral Rowan, the message confirmed that time was almost gone. He sent final orders to the Spectre crews, giving them clearance to begin their operations. In the frozen orbit above the gas giant Theros, Spectre began its first strike. The target was a Council weapons foundry hidden within one of the planet's rings. The foundry was shielded from direct scans by the dense ice and rock around it, but the stealth crew had used weeks of observation to pinpoint its location. Lieutenant Kara, the ship's infiltration specialist, led a small team in powered suits through the drifting ice. They moved like silent hunters, planting magnetic charges on the foundry's main power conduits. But instead of destroying them outright, Kara altered their programming. When triggered, the charges would overload the foundry's control systems, causing the automated defense drones to switch targets, attacking only non-human vessels. Back on the Spectre 2, the captain smiled at the thought. The foundry would appear normal until the moment the humans needed chaos, at which point it would become a trap for the Council's own fleet. In another sector, Spectre crept toward a communications hub orbiting the barren moon of Alvin. The hub linked 3 Council fleets, relaying orders and data across the region. Disabling it would blind those fleets to each other's movements. Using a stolen Council access code, the Spectre crew docked without raising alarms. They moved through maintenance corridors, replacing key routing chips with human-made decoys. These decoys would fail at the chosen moment, scattering false orders and shutting down large sections of the network. While these missions unfolded, the legend of the Ghost Fleet began to spread among the Council's lower ranks. Merchant captains whispered about human ships that appeared from nowhere, disabling patrols without a fight. A freighter crew swore they had seen a Council warship suddenly turn on its own escorts after its systems were hacked. The stories were not yet believed by the Council leadership, but the seeds of uncertainty were planted. On Varela, Lysa faced her own challenge. A new security sweep had begun. In the engineering sectors, guards were checking work terminals for unauthorized data transfers. She knew that if they scanned her diagnostic tool, they would find the maps and notes she had been gathering. Thinking quickly, Lysa slipped into the coolant maintenance crawlspace, a narrow tunnel above the main machinery. There, she placed the tool inside an old emergency supply kit and sealed it behind a panel. If she were searched, her workstation would appear clean. She could retrieve the tool later, once the sweep ended. In the command center above Earth, Rowan received the first confirmation of success. A Council patrol in the Beshar sector had reported mechanical failures after an encounter with an unidentified vessel. 2 days later, a supply depot in the same region went silent, its systems locked by a virus that erased all tracking data. Rowan knew these were the opening moves. The Council still thought humanity was holding still, afraid to act. That illusion would not last much longer. Commander Inspector 1 reached its own target, a refueling station used by one of the Council's heavy battle groups. The station was critical for keeping the warships supplied on long patrols. Instead of destroying it outright, Iden's crew planted timed sabotage in the fuel processors. At the chosen moment, the fuel would become useless, forcing the battle group to retreat or risk being stranded. Every strike was planned with the same care, not to bring attention now, but to weaken the Council's strength for the moment of humanity's counterattack. By the end of the 6th day since Lysa's first warning, all 8 Spectre-class ships were in position. Some had already planted sabotage, others were lying in wait for high-value targets. The crews knew that when Rowan gave the word, their missions would change from shadow operations to full disruption. But the danger was growing. The Council's intelligence network had begun to detect small gaps in their own systems, missing supply convoys, corrupted data files, and sensor blind spots. High Command dismissed the idea of a coordinated attack, blaming pirates or technical faults. But some lower-ranking officers began to suspect a hidden enemy. On the morning of the 7th day, Rowan stood before the main strategy display. It showed the Council's fleet deployments, now slightly shifted due to the Spectre operations. Several patrols had been pulled from Earth's border to cover other sectors. The noose around humanity was loosening, just enough for a strike. Rowan turned to his officers. This is the moment we have prepared for. The Council's attention is divided. Their systems are compromised, and their fleets are spread thin. Tomorrow, we move on Varela. Bren frowned. The risk is still high. If even one part of the plan fails, they could close the trap before we reach the station. Rowan's voice was calm. That is why we will not arrive in force. We will arrive in silence, and when the Council sees us, it will be too late, far away. In the dark corridors of Varela, Lysa looked out a narrow maintenance viewport toward the stars. Somewhere out there, she knew the Ghost Fleet was moving. She had no way to see them, but she trusted they were coming. She would survive one more day, keep her head down, and be ready when the moment came. In the emptiness of space, the Spectre-class cruisers drifted unseen, each one holding the power to cripple the Council's grip. They were shadows in the dark, waiting for the signal that would turn whispers into fire. The day of silence was ending. The storm began without warning. From the outside, the Council's fleet deployments looked normal. Patrols moved along their assigned routes. Supply stations sent regular traffic updates. Weapons foundries reported production numbers. To the Council's command network, everything appeared calm. Then, one by one, the quiet traps set by the Spectre-class crews began to spring. It started in the Theros system. The weapons foundry hidden inside the gas giant's rings suddenly went into emergency lockdown. automated defense drones designed to protect the facility from intruders, turned their weapons on the Council's own patrol ships. Surveillance records later showed the confusion on the bridge of a destroyer as it tried to signal the drones. The drones did not respond. Within minutes, the patrol ships were disabled, their engines burning from precision laser strikes. The Foundry's operators sent distress calls, but the comm signals were scrambled by a virus planted during the human infiltration. The system's main data channels filled with false reports, making it impossible for the Council to understand what was happening in real time. In the Alvin sector, the communications hub sabotaged by Spectre 4 suddenly flooded the Council's networks with fake orders. One fleet was instructed to break formation and retreat to a sector on the far edge of their territory. Another was told to stand down entirely, leaving a major trade route unguarded. The Council's commanders began to argue over which orders were genuine, slowing their reaction time even further. At the same moment, Spectre 1 triggered the fuel processor sabotage at the refueling station for one of the Council's heavy battle groups. The fuel's chemical structure had been altered by a hidden device, turning it into useless sludge. Warships docked at the station suddenly found their engines unable to ignite. Engineers scrambled to flush their systems, but the damage had already been done. Without fuel, the battle group could not hold its position near human space. On Varela Station, Lysa noticed the first sign of the unfolding chaos when the station's security teams received urgent new orders. Some guards were pulled from the Envoy detention wing to deal with disturbances in the docking bays. The air was filled with shouted orders and confused responses. She knew this was the moment Admiral Rowan had been waiting for. Back on Earth's command station, Rowan studied the live updates from the Spectre crews. The operations were unfolding perfectly. Each strike had been timed to overlap with the next, creating a chain reaction of confusion and miscommunication across the Council's defense grid. Rowan turned to Commander Bren. Order the Ghost Fleet to move to their secondary targets. If the Council tries to regroup, we make it harder for them. No recovery, no stability. In the Pharaoh's system, Spectre had already left the damaged foundry behind and was moving toward a convoy, carrying weapons to another sector. The convoy's escort ships had received false orders from the hacked communications hub, pulling them away from their assigned routes. The convoy was now undefended, making it easy for the humans to board and disable the cargo vessels. The weapons inside, advanced plasma cannons meant for Council cruisers, were tagged with trackers and left adrift. Later, these same weapons could be reclaimed and turned against their former owners. In the Alvin sector, Spectre 4 used the confusion at the comm hub to plant deeper viruses in the Council's command software. These programs would remain hidden until the humans decided to trigger them, creating long-term disruption. Meanwhile, Spectre 1 returned to the crippled refueling station and quietly linked its data systems to the station's main defense grid. This gave humanity direct control of its automated turrets. The station would now fire on any non-human vessel that approached, effectively cutting off a vital supply point for the Council. By mid-cycle, the Council's fleet command centers were in chaos. Messages from one sector contradicted messages from another. Some officers insisted they were under attack, while others claimed it was a communications error. Fleet movements became unpredictable, with some units retreating without orders while others advanced toward empty space. The confusion spread even to Varela Station. Docking bays were closed to prevent suspected infiltration, leaving dozens of merchant ships trapped in orbit. Many captains, frustrated by the delays, began broadcasting rumors of a human shadow fleet moving unseen through the stars. In the detention wing, the number of guards had been reduced again as security forces were stretched thin. Lysa used the opportunity to move closer to the Envoy's holding area. Through a narrow service hatch, she caught sight of Ambassador Hale and the others. They looked tired but alert, speaking in low voices. Hale saw her and gave a brief nod, a sign that he understood help was on the way. Rowan's plan was working, but he knew the Council's confusion would not last forever. Eventually, their commanders would identify the pattern and guess that The humans were behind it. That meant the next phase had to begin before the Council could recover. From the command center, Rowan sent a secure signal to all Spectre crews. Phase 2. Initiate weapons conversion. This was the part of the plan that would sting the most. The humans had no interest in simply destroying the Council's weapons. Instead, they would reprogram them using remote access and direct infiltration. The Spectre crews began altering the targeting systems of captured drones, automated turrets, and missile platforms. The new programming was simple: identify and attack any ship whose transponder did not match human identification codes within hours. The Council's own automated defenses began turning against their fleets, and the Theros system, a squadron of patrol ships, was driven back by drones they had trusted for years. In the Alvin sector, missile batteries on an unmanned station suddenly launched against passing Council transports. The damage was not only physical, it eroded trust. Council crews began refusing to approach there. The great orbital station Varela hung against the stars, its silver rings glinting in the light of the nearby sun. To most, it looked unshaken by the chaos spreading across the galaxy. But inside, tension was building like pressure in a sealed chamber. For days, the Council's security teams had been pulled away to deal with strange malfunctions, missing supply convoys, and automated defenses turning hostile. Every hour, more reports came in from distant sectors, fleets misdirected, stations locked down, and drones refusing to obey orders. Some whispered that the galaxy was under attack by an invisible enemy. Others had already guessed the truth, though they spoke it only in private. In the Envoy detention wing, Ambassador Hale sat with the other human delegates in the dimly lit cell. He kept his voice low, but his words were steady. We are still here. That means our people are moving. When the moment comes, we must be ready to act. The envoys nodded. They trusted that Admiral Rowan had not abandoned them. In the maintenance levels far below, Lysa worked quickly at her console. She had been waiting for a specific signal from Earth, hidden in the daily system's traffic. That morning, it arrived, a line of code buried in a request for coolant filter checks. It was a simple phrase when decoded: standby, operation beginning. Lysa's pulse quickened. She knew this meant the rescue was about to start. She made her way to a restricted access shaft that led near the detention wing. The shaft had been locked for years, but her clearance as a maintenance engineer gave her the ability to override the seals. She climbed inside, carrying a small toolkit that held more than just tools. At the edge of the system, the Spectre-class ships began their final approach. The chaos they had unleashed in the surrounding sectors had pulled most of the Council's local warships away from Varela. Only a few patrol cruisers remained, and their attention was split between guarding the station and trying to restore communications. With the rest of the fleet, Admiral Roan's flagship, the Resolute, waited just outside the system's main sensor range. Smaller escorts moved with it, ready to rush in once the Spectres had cleared the way. The first strike came from Spectre 1, using the codes it had stolen from the refueling station. It accessed Varela's outer defense grid. For a brief window, the station's powerful gun batteries turned inward, targeting the very ships they were meant to protect. One patrol cruiser was disabled before the grid was shut down by frantic Council technicians. But the damage was done. The outer defense line now had gaps wide enough for the Spectres to slip through unseen. Inside the station, alarms blared. Security units scrambled toward docking bays and defense control rooms. The sudden movement gave Lysa the cover she needed to slip through a service quarter and into the detention wing's maintenance control. She accessed the energy barrier systems, bypassing their lockouts and programming a hidden shutdown command that could be activated remotely. At the same time, Spectre 3 approached one of Varela's cargo docks, disguised as a supply vessel, whose identity had been stolen from Council records. Docking clearance was granted without suspicion. Once inside, the crew released a swarm of small drones, each one programmed to disable surveillance cameras and jam security channels. The drones moved through the station like insects in a hive, shorting out systems and creating blind spots in the guards' monitoring network. This gave the human infiltrators the advantage they needed. Rowan, aboard the Resolute, received the signal from the Spectres, infiltration complete, defense grid compromised, inner security blinded. It was time to move. Engage jump drive. He ordered, "Take us in." The Resolute and its escorts emerged from their hidden position, streaking toward Varela at full speed. The station's sensors detected them, but with so many systems failing, the warning came too late for the Council to mount an organized defense. As the ships closed in, Lysa activated the shutdown command she had prepared. In the detention wing, the shimmering energy barriers flickered and vanished. The human envoys wasted no time. Hale stepped forward, using his strength to push past the stunned guards. A brief struggle followed, but with most of the guards reassigned elsewhere, the resistance was light. Within minutes, the envoys had secured the wing and armed themselves with weapons taken from their captors. "Lysa," Hale said over a short-range comm, "we have control here." "Where do we meet your rescue team?" "Service Bay 12, she replied. "It connects directly to a docking platform the Spectres can reach." The group moved quickly, following Lysa's directions through narrow maintenance corridors. Behind them, more alarms began to sound, this time not for malfunctions, but for intruders. Council security was finally realizing that the humans were loose. In the docking bay, Spectre 5 was already in position, its boarding ramp lowered, and the envoys ran aboard as covering fire echoed from the corridors. The ship lifted off just as security teams burst into the bay, outside the station. The Resolute had positioned itself between Varela and the remaining patrol cruisers. Laser fire flashed across the darkness, but Rowan's ships moved with precision, striking at engines and weapons systems rather than aiming for total destruction. His goal was not to destroy the station, not yet, but to hold the line until the envoys were safe. On board Spectre 5, Lysa looked back through the viewport as the station began to shrink in the distance. She could see the flashes of combat outside and felt a swell of relief knowing Admiral Rowan was there. Once the envoys were clear, Rowan ordered the Resolute to disengage. The mission had been to free the prisoners, not to start the final battle. That time would come soon enough. The Spectres scattered once more, vanishing into deep space to prepare for the next stage. But Rowan had not left empty-handed. During the infiltration, one of the Spectre crews had access to Varela's central data archives. The files they had taken were priceless, full records of the Council's operations, including proof of their false accusations against Earth. As the human fleet regrouped in a hidden staging area, Rowan addressed his officers. "We have the evidence. We have our people back. Now we make the galaxy see the truth." The rescued envoys stood in the command center, their expressions a mix of exhaustion and determination. Hale stepped forward. "You struck from the shadows and freed us. Now it is time to strike in the open." Rowan nodded. The next step would be the most dangerous, broadcasting the proof to every corner of the galaxy, breaking the Council's grip not with fire alone, but with truth. Far across the stars, the Council's leaders sat in their high chamber, unaware that the information stolen from their own archives was about to turn the galaxy against them. The chains they had placed on humanity had been broken. Soon, the entire galactic order would begin to break with them. The vast communication arrays of the Galactic Council hummed quietly. In the depths of the capital station, endless streams of data flowed through fiber optic conduits, relaying messages across the galaxy at light speed. The Council leaders believed their control was absolute. Their message would be the only one heard. But deep within the station's core, a hidden human team worked with precision. Spectre 6, led by Captain Mara, had slipped past the outer defenses during the recent chaos and gained access to the main broadcast node. The stolen data from Varela was stored on a portable device, ready to be uploaded to every Council communication channel. Mara glanced at her team. "This is it. Once we send this, there's no turning back. The whole galaxy will see the truth." Her voice was steady, but the weight of the moment hung heavy. She tapped commands into the console. The device connected and began transferring files. The data was vast, intercepted conversations, secret Council orders, proof of false accusations against Earth, and records of the harsh treatment the human envoys had suffered. It was a mountain of evidence that the Council could not hide. Outside the station, human warships formed a silent ring, ready to protect the broadcasting team against any sudden Council response. Rowan's flagship, the Resolute, coordinated the fleet. Every sensor was trained on potential threats. Within minutes, the broadcast began across the galaxy. Council stations and fleet ships suddenly received a flood of transmissions. The usual Council propaganda was replaced by raw footage, audio files, and documents revealing the truth. The lies that had justified the war against humanity were exposed for all to see. In trading hubs, communication centers, and even among Council fleets, confusion spread. Soldiers and civilians alike paused their routines to watch the unexpected broadcasts. Questions began to rise. At a remote mining colony, a Council officer turned off his comm link in shock. "They lied to us," he whispered. "We have been fighting the wrong enemy." On the capital station, Council leaders reacted with disbelief and rage. Screens flickered with the unauthorized broadcasts. Emergency shutdown protocols were activated. But the human team had already spread the data to backup servers hidden in distant systems. The Council's grip on information was slipping. Admiral Rowan watched the unfolding chaos with quiet satisfaction. "The truth is our greatest weapon now," he said to Commander Bren. "Let them try to fight a war where their own people doubt them." The broadcast had another immediate effect. Rebel groups and neutral factions, long uneasy with the Council's rule, seized the moment. Signals poured in from independent systems declaring support for humanity or demanding peace talks. The galaxy was beginning to question the Council's authority. Meanwhile, the Council scrambled to respond militarily. Fleets were ordered to regroup and hunt down the human ships responsible. But with their own command systems compromised and their communication networks unreliable, their response was slow and uncoordinated. In the shadows of a distant asteroid belt, Spectre 3 intercepted a Council battle group moving to intercept the human fleet. Instead of a direct fight, they used their stealth technology to disable key systems on the enemy ships, forcing them to retreat for repairs. Each victory, small but certain, added to the growing legend of the Ghost Fleet back on Earth. Celebrations were quiet but heartfelt. Citizens watched the broadcast with pride and hope. The truth had broken through the darkness of war and lies. At the same time, Rowan knew this was only the beginning. The Council would not surrender without a fight. The coming days would test humanity's courage and resolve. "Prepare the fleet," he ordered. "We will defend the truth with every ship we have." As the broadcast continued to ripple through the galaxy, a new era dawned. The shadows that had hidden humanity were lifting. The light of truth was shining brightly, and with it, the hope that peace and justice might finally be possible. The galaxy felt different now. The great shadows cast by the Galactic Council were fading. Where once fear and silence ruled, a new hope began to rise. Admiral Rowan stood on the bridge of the Resolute, watching the stars stretch across the vast emptiness. Around him, the human fleet prepared for what would be the final chapter of their struggle. They were no longer hunted. They were leaders. Reports from across the galaxy showed the Council's power weakening. Systems that once obeyed without question were now declaring independence. Rebel factions grew bolder. Some former Council allies sent envoys seeking peace with humanity. Rowan knew the Council would fight to keep control, but their unity was broken. The lies they had built their rule on had been shattered by the truth. Now, it was a matter of who could hold the future together. The Resolute received a transmission from the core of the Council's capital station. The message was simple. Request for peace talks. Rowan smiled. The first step was made. In the meantime, the human envoys, led by Ambassador Hale, returned to the capital station. The atmosphere was tense but hopeful. Many among the Council's people wanted change. They had seen the truth. They wanted to build a galaxy where all species could live with respect. Hale spoke in the Great Hall, his voice carrying across the assembled delegates. "We came here as prisoners, accused and condemned without justice. Today, we stand as partners for a new future. a future where truth guides us and trust binds us. The council leaders, humbled by defeat and the courage of humanity, listened. Carefully, they knew the galaxy could no longer be ruled by fear and lies. Meanwhile, Admiral Rowan coordinated with former Council fleet commanders who had switched sides. Together, they planned to rebuild the broken systems, restore trade routes, and ensure security for all planets. Yet Rowan remained cautious. Peace must be earned every day. He told his officers, "We have a chance to create something better, but only if we do not forget the cost of war." Outside the capital station, the human fleet maintained a protective presence. It was a symbol of strength and goodwill, a promise that humanity would defend the new order against those who wished to return to old ways. As peace talks progressed, old enemies found new reasons to cooperate. Scientists shared technology, diplomats exchanged ideas, and artists created works celebrating unity. The galaxy's culture began to flourish in ways never imagined on Earth. Citizens watched the unfolding events with pride. They knew their journey had been long and difficult, but the sacrifices made had not been in vain. In one final meeting between Rowan and the Council's former leaders, an agreement was signed. It recognized the sovereignty of all species, established a new galactic assembly with equal representation, and promised transparent governance. Rowan looked out at the stars one last time before the meeting ended. He knew challenges would remain, but the galaxy had changed forever. Humanity's revenge had become humanity's leadership, from the ashes of betrayal and war. A new hope had risen. The stars now belonged to everyone. And this time, they would shine together.